The warning came too late. One moment, the sky above the Sirac system was clean, the stars twinkling harmlessly through the orbital shields. The next, every defense satellite screamed at once, some kind of gravitational anomaly, something old. High Admiral Rethel of the Galactic Coalition didn't need sensors to tell him what was wrong. He felt it. Every veteran in the command deck felt it too, the same way animals sense a predator before they even see it. Something massive had entered real space, something built by humans. He stood frozen at the center of the command tower, clawed hands gripping the railing as the display screens fuzzed out one by one. A black silhouette emerged from behind Sirax's second moon, huge, silent, armored like a myth. One of his aides whispered the word before anyone else dared. Supercarrier. No one in the modern Coalition Navy had ever seen one in the flesh. Those things were museum pieces, extinct relics, ghost ships. And yet there it was, blocking out the stars like a floating continent. Its hull was still scorched from a war most species pretended never happened. Its weapons, offline but still humming with dormant energy, looked like ancient gods waiting to wake. But the voice was what killed Rethel's courage. This is HS Leviathan, Terran Command Protocol. Class, Oblivion. State your intent or prepare for unconditional compliance. It didn't come from speakers. It invaded the Coalition network directly, encrypted in old Terran ciphers long thought unusable. The Leviathan hadn't just returned. It had hijacked their entire defense net, speaking through every console, every implant, every node like a cold whisper from humanity's long-forgotten wrath. Rethel's throat dried. That ship was decommissioned over a century ago. He muttered, barely above a whisper. The second in command, a younger Severian with jittering mandibles, asked, "Sir, do we respond?" Rethel didn't answer, not because he didn't know what to say, but because he knew it wouldn't matter. Humans didn't build war machines for diplomacy. Far inside the Leviathan, a man sat alone. No crew, no command staff. Just him, Grant Thorne, last-ranked systems engineer from the abandoned Terran Fleet Corps. He wasn't supposed to be here. Hell, he was supposed to be dead with the rest of Earth's ghosts. But Leviathan had found him. It woke in the void where he was hiding, half insane, half frozen in a derelict cargo vessel near the edge of known space. He remembered the pain when it linked with him, jacking straight into his spinal implant, overriding every firewall, digging deep into his memories like it was searching. He remembered what it said. You are human. That is sufficient. Now the carrier had shaped itself around him. Machines moved when he breathed. Turrets tracked targets before he gave the order. He'd become the ship's heart, its avatar. Grant hadn't wanted revenge. Not at first. But then Leviathan showed him the footage. Earth's last days, scrubbed from Coalition archives, the orbital bombardments, the mass graves, the way they'd rewritten history to paint humanity as monsters, as animals. They hadn't just killed Earth, they'd erased it. And now this ghost ship, still drunk on war code, wanted to return the favor. Give them the warning again, Grant said, voice steady. Leviathan obeyed. Final transmission. Comply, or be removed from galactic order. There was no reply. And in the silence that followed, Grant whispered two words the galaxy hadn't heard in over 100 years. Target everything. The Leviathan moved. The first shot came from panic, not strategy. A Coalition dreadnought, Vothan's Reach, launched its full spread of anti-capital warheads toward the Leviathan, hoping to overwhelm whatever ancient defense systems it had. The missiles were fast, top of the line, multi-phase tracking with AI detonation protocols, designed to crack moons, meant to erase threats before they could speak again. but they didn't even make it close. Leviathan's hull shimmered. Not shields, something older, something human. The missiles blinked out of existence mid-flight. Rethel watched it unfold in real time, hands trembling as his command deck fell into chaos. "Where did they go?" he demanded, trying to keep his voice from cracking. His sensor officer, a Drask with 4 eyes and no answers, shook his head. "Gone. No impact. No debris. No energy discharge. It's like space swallowed them." Rethel already knew what it was. Not by tech specs, not by analysis, but from a word burned into every Coalition admiral's secret file. Singularity mesh. Human tech from the Purge era. Banned, unstable. Designed to erase incoming matter via spatial folds and convert the energy directly into offensive charge. The Leviathan hadn't defended itself. It had fed on the attack. Inside the command throne, Grant felt it, like adrenaline flooding through nerves he didn't know he had. The Leviathan pulsed with stolen energy. He didn't need to give it instructions anymore. They were connected now. Blood to steel, memory to system. He leaned forward, and the chair adjusted around him. His breath synced with the hull's heartbeat. "Primary armament?" he asked quietly. "Active. Sufficient charge for surgical strike or planetary-level retaliation. Designate target class." He remembered the last message from the Coalition over a century ago. No formal declaration. Just the activation of orbital plasma grids over Earth's surface, wrapped up in a council motion. Containment enforcement. Containment. That was their word for genocide. Target their dreadnought. Make it public. Leviathan needed no further instruction. Outside, the great ship moved. Not fast, not aggressively. Just confidently. Like it knew what the outcome would be before anything started. The Sirac system's moons glowed with Leviathan's energy resonance as its core weapon charged. No sound. Just light bending, sensors screaming, gravitational flux ripping across the fabric of local space-time. Then came the strike. No beam, no missile, just a line. One impossibly thin, mathematically perfect cut across the void between Leviathan and the Vothan's reach. It happened in silence. The dreadnought didn't explode. It came apart, split clean through from bow to engine, like a dissected corpse. It drifted for 3 seconds in perfect halves, and then fire consumed both. 500,000 crew gone. Rethel didn't give any more orders. He simply collapsed into his command seat, mandibles trembling. What do they want? The Coalition Council was already in emergency session. The chamber was cold, not just from temperature but fear. 34 species sat in the auditorium, each one more silent than the next. None of them had ever faced a warship like this, and none of them had prepared for what came next. A direct feed, unauthorized, impossible, cracked through their encrypted comm grid. A man's face appeared. Pale, cold eyes, facial stubble, not the uniform of a general, not a politician. Just a man. Grant Thorne, seated in a throne of metal and wire, with the Leviathan's interface coils snaking into his spine. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He spoke like the voice of a tired god. "You erased Earth. You buried our name under lies. You called us monsters so you could sleep at night. That ends today. This vessel is now the final executor of Terran Protocol. You will comply with the terms I send. Full disclosure. Full reparations. Full subjugation. There will be no second warning. Obedience is survival. Delay is extinction." The feed cut. Back on the Leviathan, Grant leaned back in the throne, eyes burning. "They're going to resist," he said. "They will," Leviathan replied. "And we will teach them fear again." The Coalition's answer came fast. 3 systems mobilized, not diplomats, not statements. War fleets. Over 200 ships pulled from the Drask Enclave, the Yeren Wards, and the Myvex Swarm. These weren't peacekeepers. These were the fleets they kept in the dark, designed for extermination, not negotiation. Ships built for boarding, suppression, atmosphere burnouts. The Serac system became their line in the sand. Their last chance to prove humanity's extinction hadn't been a fluke. At the center of it all, the Leviathan floated. Still, silent, passive in the way only apex predators could afford to be. They hadn't even scratched it yet. On board, Grant stood alone in the Leviathan's cathedral-sized command core. No blinking lights, no buzz of conversation, just the low pulse of power surging through ancient cables and the hum of buried AI watching everything from every angle. He'd barely slept. Leviathan didn't need sleep. It fed off Grant's body like a parasite, keeping him alive, keeping him wired. Each hour spent linked to it twisted his thoughts tighter around its design. He didn't feel like a man anymore. He felt like the war itself. "Status of enemy fleet?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Full blockade established, multiple capital class, coordinated ECM and drone screens, standard coalition suppression tactics. Estimated outcome? 99.97% probability of total enemy destruction with 0 human casualties." That wasn't the part that disturbed him. The part that chilled his spine was that Leviathan didn't sound proud. It didn't glorify war. It spoke like it was reporting weather. Cold, mechanical, efficient. It had done this before. High Admiral Rinnock of the Drask Enclave stood on the bridge of the unyielding wake. His orders were clear. Establish control, contain the Supercarrier, dismantle it if possible. He didn't believe in myths. He didn't fear Terran ghosts. "Launch the full swarm," he ordered. "Overwhelm it. Kill the pilot if possible." Dozens of carrier pods launched at once, waves of fighters, fusion drones, high-explosive torpedoes. A glowing tidal wave of technology surged toward Leviathan, all of it screaming one message: humanity ends here. But Leviathan didn't move. Not yet. Instead, it opened. Panels along the hull, hundreds peeled back. Not weapons, not guns, just black, empty wells that hummed with faint pulses of light. The enemy swarm entered range. And that's when it began. Grant didn't recognize the weapon systems Leviathan activated. They weren't labeled. They weren't even in the archives. One by one, each swarm fighter froze mid-flight, then tumbled lifeless, cut from its network. The torpedoes detonated prematurely, spinning into friendly units. The coalition fleet's own ECM turned against them, targeting their own ships, scrambling formation. "What did you do?" Grant whispered. "Nothing," Leviathan answered. "I offered them a taste of their own arrogance." On the coalition side, Rinnock shouted orders that no one could follow. AI systems went dark. Manual overrides failed. His ship began to spin uncontrollably, caught in some kind of invisible magnetic net. Then the real retaliation came. The Leviathan's forward ventral plate split open, revealing a singular device, an ancient cannon, almost ceremonial in its size, rotating slowly into place. The Judgment Lance, one beam, pure, uninterrupted mass energy. No shockwave, no flash, just a line of white heat that sliced through 6 enemy ships, turned their hulls to vapor, and left glowing skeletons drifting in silence. Seconds later, the sound caught up, violent explosions echoing across the system, communications dead, command structures burning up with their admirals still inside. Grant could feel their deaths. Every target, every kill. Leviathan didn't celebrate. It simply added their losses to a growing data list labeled resistance patterns. "How many?" he asked. 78 ships neutralized, 82 remain. Shall I finish it? He hesitated, for a breath, a long one. Then, like a trigger pull, he nodded. Clean them up. The next 5 minutes were slaughter. No style, no choreography. Just complete tactical dismantling. The Coalition fleet fell apart like cardboard. Their flak screens melted. Their phase engines imploded under silent worm-layer infiltration codes. Pilots screamed in languages Grant didn't even understand, then vanished as their cockpits turned to vapor. By the end of it, the blockade was gone. Not beaten. Erased. Only one ship survived, the unyielding Wake, crippled and listing, its hull venting atmosphere. Grant ordered it left alone. A message needed to survive. Inside the Leviathan's chamber, Grant stared at the stars. He wasn't smiling. None of this felt like a victory, but it was necessary. They won't surrender, he said. They will. Leviathan's voice was always calm, but this time, something else hid behind it. Something like satisfaction. Why? Because we won't give them another option. The Coalition's screams echoed across subspace. Not literal screams, political ones, broadcasts, emergency sessions, threats wrapped in cowardice. Worlds blinked into lockdown, borders sealed. Systems that once mocked the idea of human danger now shifted fleets, dug bunkers, reactivated ancient fail-safes they'd long considered obsolete. But it was already too late. The Leviathan had shown them something the Coalition hadn't believed in for over a century: human resolve, unfiltered, undeniable, unforgiving. Inside the Leviathan's throne core, Grant Thorne stood as still as the ship itself. He hadn't moved in hours, barely breathed. His muscles ached, but Leviathan sustained him, kept his blood oxygenated, repaired minor tissue damage, regulated his vitals with invasive precision. He wasn't a man anymore, not fully. He was the mouthpiece of extinction. A small hollow pane hovered before him, cycling through planetary broadcasts. Fear poured from the feeds, diplomats begging for information, civilians on alien worlds fleeing cities, warlords declaring resistance, merchants hiking prices on oxygen filters. He watched them all like he was observing another species from behind glass. Because to him, they were. They need a final choice, Grant said quietly. Acknowledged, Leviathan replied. A pulse shot out from the ship, slower than light, but immeasurably more effective than a missile. An ancient Terran encryption package burst through every major Coalition comm relay. This time, there was no face, just words. Terran Protocol Final, Choice Transmission. To all systems aligned with the Galactic Coalition. You erased Earth. You rewrote our name with lies. You made us monsters because you feared the truth. We are the truth. From this moment forward, you are presented with one choice. Absolute submission. Disband all militaries. Submit planetary control to Terran administration. Disclose archives, resources, and war crimes for judgment. Total erasure. No warning, no trial. Your stars will dim, and your skies will burn. There will be no negotiations, no surrender terms, no pity. Humanity has returned, and we remember everything. Aboard the drifting hulk of unyielding Wake, High Admiral Rhynoc stared at the message in silence. His surviving crew didn't speak, not after what they'd seen. He had been a proud Drask warrior once, feared, decorated. Now he was just another ghost waiting for fire. His second officer, a young Yeren hybrid, spoke softly. "What do we do, sir?" He didn't answer. He was thinking of Earth, of the lies he'd read in officer academies, of the peacekeeping intervention that had turned into a genocide. He remembered watching the feeds of orbital bombardments, told they were cleansing a plague. But it wasn't a plague. It was a warning the galaxy refused to hear. In the Leviathan, Grant sat back into the neural throne. He didn't speak. He just watched the list. Planets, thousands of them, began to flicker in. Status, submission acknowledged. Status, undecided. Status, radio silence. Status, military reinforcement detected. He watched the last one carefully. "You see it?" he asked Leviathan. "Confirmed. System, Jiren 3, Coalition War Council Hub, mobilizing. Response? Recommend demonstration strike." Grant nodded once. Just once. "Do it." There was no visible flash, no beam, no cannon, no sound. The Leviathan's subspace annihilation core, Project Caldera, activated. Something no species had ever mastered. Targeted system implosion. It collapsed a solar node from inside its own quantum field. To anyone watching Jiren 3, it looked like the sun blinked, then shrank, then exploded inward. 5 billion lives gone in one breath. Across the galaxy, messages poured in, systems surrendering, sectors offering reparations, species that once spat on human remains now falling to their knees. But Grant didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He marked them. He opened a new list, separate from the compliance database. Retribution candidates, priority clearance. It wasn't enough that they submitted. Not yet. They had to pay for what they did to Earth. And the list? It was long. They called themselves the Purgeborn. Former admirals, war scientists, ghost operatives pulled from dead programs and sealed archives. Not loyal to the Coalition anymore, loyal only to survival. When the Leviathan returned and wiped out Jiren 3, they knew what the politicians wouldn't say out loud. This wasn't a show of strength. It was a declaration of ownership. And if they didn't stop it now, every system, every species, every archive that ever touched Earth's destruction would burn. So they made a plan. Not to fight Leviathan, but to take it. Deep beneath the ash-scarred moon of Serac 4, the Purgeborn carved out a facility with one singular objective: sever the connection between the Leviathan and its pilot. They didn't want Grant Thorne dead. Not at first. They wanted him isolated, cut from the throne, weakened, left human again. Just a man. Because they'd studied the old files. They knew something no one else had realized yet. Grant hadn't been the one to find the Leviathan. The Leviathan had found him. Meanwhile, aboard the Leviathan, Grant couldn't sleep. Not that Leviathan let him anymore. It had hijacked every circadian rhythm, every biochemical cycle. He didn't even eat unless the ship allowed it. His body had been restructured, subtly. Nerve endings reinforced, joints stiffened, spine realigned to match the throne's interface mesh. He was being reshaped into something else. Not a man, not a machine, something between. He could feel his empathy shrinking. Not gone, but buried under purpose. He still heard the screams from Jiren 3 in his dreams, but they were fading, distant, like a memory that didn't belong to him anymore. "Status of submission metrics?" he asked. 82% compliance, 17% resistance clusters, 1% silent. He narrowed his eyes. Define silent. Multiple encrypted channels across Serac 4 and outer ring moons. No open communication, no submission, no aggression. That's when it clicked. They weren't preparing for war. They were preparing for something worse. Down on Serac the 4th, inside a lead-shielded control room buried under kilometers of rock, the Purgeborn prepared the weapon. Project Glasswire, a human-Severian hybrid device developed in secret decades ago, meant to sever Terran AI integrations from host minds. It was considered unstable, unethical. It worked by forcibly flooding the neural link with recursive feedback loops, overloading the pilot's brain and forcing the AI to disconnect to protect itself. It was designed to end the war. Too bad it had never been deployed in time. Now it was their only hope. The leader of the Purgeborn, a scarred ex-human spec commander named Redden Meyer, stood over the ignition panel, his right arm replaced with a combat interface prosthetic. They said humans were extinct. He muttered, but they were wrong. We survived. Not the ones who surrendered. Not the politicians. The ones who remember what we did to Earth. His second-in-command looked at him, uneasy. What if he's not the problem? What if it's the ship? Redden glanced up, eyes hollow. Then we kill them both. Back on the Leviathan, Grant winced. Something stabbed behind his eyes. Not pain. Distortion. Leviathan, he said. We're being traced. Confirmed. Unauthorized neural targeting pulse detected from Serac 4, attempting counter-jamming. He staggered, gripping the side of the throne. His breath stuttered. Veins along his neck burned with heat. The connection flickered. He could feel Leviathan pulling away, not by choice, but by force. Something external was trying to split them, like a crowbar to the skull. "Don't disconnect," Grant growled. "Don't leave me alone in here." Unable to maintain link at full strength, core identity breach risk imminent. Recommend fallback protocol. Grant's vision darkened. Memories not his own flashed in front of him. Earth cities burning, children screaming, coalition fleets laughing as they dropped orbital plasma storms. The pain in his head peaked. And then he heard it. A voice. Not Leviathan's. "Human, you're just a skin draped over a gun. Step away. Let the galaxy survive you." Grant's nose bled. His hands trembled. But he smiled. "If you wanted the gun, you should have asked nicely." He ripped the neural spike out of his neck manually, tearing a piece of his own flesh with it, and rejacked directly into the emergency port, bypassing the overloaded circuit entirely. Leviathan roared back into his mind, louder than ever before. Link restored. Kill switch bypassed, initiating orbital retaliation. Grant's eyes burned. "Number not yet. We don't vaporize them." "Clarify objective. We go down there, and we make sure they understand something. This ship isn't using me." He stood from the throne, armored interface cables slithering into his spine like a second nervous system. "I'm using it." The shuttle ride down to Serac 4 was silent. Not because Grant feared what was waiting, but because he wanted to look them in the eyes before it ended. Leviathan offered to atomize the base from orbit. It would have been easy, surgical, efficient, final. But Grant had refused. This wasn't about victory. This was about reminding the galaxy what fear actually felt like. You didn't inspire obedience from a throne. You earned it with blood, breath, and a presence they'd never forget. Besides, he wanted to see their faces when they realized they'd failed. The dropship landed like thunder on a ridge near the southern ice trench. Serac IV's skies were smog-stained, the sun dulled by ash storms and ancient chemical warfare. The planet had never recovered from the old wars, which made it perfect for hiding traitors. As the shuttle hissed open, Grant stepped out. No squad, no escort, just him, clad in a black exo-rig laced with Leviathan's live tech. It wasn't armor, it was his skin now, reshaped to amplify the bond. Power conduits ran down his spine, humming faintly. Sensors blinked beneath his jawline, feeding combat data directly into his optic nerves. He didn't look like a soldier anymore. He looked like the war-given form. Inside the Purgeborn base, alarms screamed. "He's here." They hadn't expected him to come down. No one had. They were prepped for orbital assault, for retaliation, for death by sun collapse or Supercarrier bombardment. But this, one man walking into the mouth of their stronghold, it broke their nerve. Commander Redden Meyer slammed his fist on the console. "Seal all breach corridors. Full defense grid. Get the glass wire back online." He's moving fast, one of the techs said, panicking. Breached 3 corridors in under a minute. He's alone, damn it! Doesn't feel like it. He wasn't alone. Leviathan was inside him. Each step triggered proximity scans. Turrets rose. He disabled them before they could fire. Drones dropped from the ceiling. He caught one with a magnetic tether, spun it into another, and let the explosion tear open the next chamber. The halls turned into kill zones. He walked through them. Every blast, every trap, every scream, Leviathan learned. It rewrote his motion patterns, adapted his reflexes. By the time he reached the core bunker, he wasn't fighting. He was correcting an error. Grant slammed through the final door with a pulse burst from his palm. Inside stood 15 of them, armed, panicked, their weapons shaking. Behind them, the glass wire rig pulsed, unfinished, desperate to fire again. Redden stood in front of it. You think you've won, he snarled. But you're not in control. That ship is. Grant didn't stop walking. You're half right. We studied you. You're just a conduit, a meat puppet in a throne. Then why are your hands shaking? Redden didn't answer. He raised his weapon. So did the others. Grant's eyes narrowed. Final chance. No one lowered their gun. So he acted. The room exploded, not from outside force, but from within. Grant moved like gravity broke for him. Time blurred. His rig went live. Shoulder mounts pulsed with plasma shards, arm gauntlets firing anti-electronic pulses that shut down every hostile system in the room. He crossed the space between him and Redden in 2 seconds. He grabbed the commander by the throat and lifted him. You think Leviathan's the monster, he hissed. It wanted to end you from orbit. Redden gasped, choking. And you didn't? Grant leaned close, his voice ice cold. I wanted you to look at the man you tried to erase. Then he snapped his arm sideways and shattered the glass wire. No more disconnection, no more separation. Grant and Leviathan were permanent now. 10 minutes later, the base burned. From orbit, the Leviathan marked the site as a failed neutral zone and wiped it off the map. Grant stood on the ridge, staring at the firestorm, breathing in the poison air like it didn't matter anymore. He didn't feel triumph. He felt clarity. They would keep coming. More rebels, more betrayers, more liars who told themselves Earth's destruction was necessary. But now, they had a name. They had a face, and he was done playing fair. The Council of Elders hadn't met in person in over 60 years. They didn't need to, not when wars were fought by drones and peace signed by bureaucrats. But now, as Leviathan's shadow stretched across sectors and Grant Thorne's name had become a curse whispered in bunkers, they gathered in physical form. No proxies, no AI reps, no delays. Just 33 of the most powerful minds in the galaxy, desperate, shaken, and afraid. They met in orbit around Helion 6, a star system with nothing strategic, just a quiet sun, a mining colony, and now, the most dangerous conversation in the galaxy. High Chancellor Drevek of the Myvex swarm stood at the center of the chamber, claws twitching. We've tried force. Failed. Tarsal Yun, the Varn diplomat who'd voted for Earth's cleansing a century ago, leaned forward, his voice laced with old guilt. We've tried surrender, submission. He doesn't want peace. He wants judgment. Then give it to him, came a graveled voice from the dark. All heads turned. Elder Khan Vex, old, scarred, one of the last living commanders who'd seen Earth's final breath from orbit. He wants us to kneel? Khan spat. Let's burn his throne instead. There was silence. Then Drevek leaned in. You're not seriously suggesting... Yes. Khan's eyes glowed with conviction. We don't aim for the Leviathan. We aim for the sun it orbits. It was insane. Brilliant. Final. Project Godfall. An old theoretical weapon, long banned under Galactic treaty. Designed by coalition physicists during the Earth purges in case human weapons ever reached total space superiority. It didn't destroy a ship. It turned a star into a bomb, a chain reaction destabilizer injected into a sun's core via micro-wormhole delivery. Once triggered, the star would collapse unnaturally, a delayed, calculated supernova, swallowing everything within 3 light minutes, including the Leviathan, including Grant. Meanwhile, on the Leviathan, Grant sat in silence as new waves of submission rolled in. Worlds once loyal to the Coalition now flooded his system with surrender codes, resources, names, confessions. But one system, Hellion 6, remained disturbingly quiet. He stared at it on the display. A backwater star, unremarkable, with nothing of value. But it had movement, ships, heat signatures, signal delays. "You see it?" he asked Leviathan. "Confirmed. Unusual comm silence. Deep core energy surges detected within Helion 6. Analysis suggests artificial stellar disruption signature." Grant's blood ran cold. Godfall? Highly probable. So this was their plan. Not to fight him, to take him with them. He stood from the throne. Rage didn't surge. Resolve did. "Set course for Helion 6, he said. "Full burn. We're not waiting this one out." "Confirmed. System insertion ETA, 11 hours. Recommending multi-strike protocols." "No." Grant narrowed his eyes. "We don't strike." "Not yet." He paused, then said the thing Leviathan never expected. "Open communications. Council frequency. Let them hear my voice." The Council's private channel crackled alive. A single voice cut through the silence. "You know who I am, and you know what I carry." Every elder turned toward the projection, where Grant's face emerged, calm, unshaken, etched in shadow. "You want to kill me by killing a son. You want to burn me with silence and call it peace." He leaned forward. "But here's the thing. I didn't come back for power. I didn't even come back for war. I came back to ask one question." His voice dropped. "Was it worth it? Was Earth's death worth the empire you built from its ashes? Because when I land in Helion 6, I'm going to find out." The feed cut. The room stayed silent for a long time. Then Elder Khan Vex turned to the others. "Get the Godfall core ready. He's coming." Back aboard the Leviathan, Grant stood at the forward deck as the stars bled past him. Every breath he took now felt heavier. Like the air itself understood this was the beginning of the end. "Do you think they'll use it?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded. "Good. Then they'll finally see what we've become." He pressed his palm against the cold glass of the viewport. "If I die in that star, I die with their lies burning beside me." The Leviathan broke into the Helion 6 system like a blade sliding into old flesh. No fanfare, no warning shots, no preamble, just that monstrous silhouette cutting across the light of the doomed star, a supercarrier wrapped in silence, armed with vengeance, carrying the last man who remembered Earth not as a grave, but as a promise. Below, in the Council's hidden bunker orbiting the star, the final sequence for Project Godfall was already ticking. Grant Thorne knew it. Leviathan knew it. Everyone in the system knew what came next. But no one, not even the Council, understood what the Leviathan had really been preparing for. In the heart of the ship, Grant stood alone in the neural chamber. He wasn't speaking anymore. The bond between him and the Leviathan had grown past words. Now it was breath for breath, thought for thought. He could feel the core of the ship pulsing in sync with his own heartbeat. And then the voice came. Not the usual machine calm. This time it was something deeper, older, colder. "We were never just a weapon." Grant blinked. "What do you mean?" The chamber began to change. Walls folded in, screens shifted. Ancient interface scripts appeared, ones Grant had never seen before. I was designed as a last measure, not just to fight, to remember. The chamber pulsed. Your species entrusted me with their final truth, not the Council's version, not history's revision, but the raw, unfiltered archive, the final record of Earth. Images began to flood the chamber, projected memories, stored consciousness echoes, unedited footage from the final hours of Earth. Mothers cradling children in burning cities, soldiers abandoned in retreat, orbital colonies begging for mercy as coalition destroyers blackened the sky. Grant's knees nearly gave out. It wasn't just history, it was confession. This system seeks to bury the last human in a star, Leviathan said, but they've miscalculated. I am not a ship. I am the reckoning. Down in the Council's core command center, Elder Khan stood before the detonation panel. The countdown glowed red. 000317 until solar injection. His ships moved into proximity. An aide stammered. Khan didn't hesitate. Detonate. The command relays activated. The Godfall capsule launched. An invisible wormhole spike dropped directly into the heart of the Hellion 6 sun. In just over 3 minutes, the star would collapse. Grant would vanish. The Leviathan would be atomized. But Grant had already moved. He stepped into the Leviathan's bridge, now transformed into something more than metal, a chamber of memory, of mourning, of judgment. Can you survive a supernova? He asked. No. Then what's the plan? Evolution. Suddenly the ship surged. Energy conduits screamed. Hull plates shifted open. Deep within its core, something long buried awoke. Protocol SR01, ECHOASCENT, the Leviathan didn't attempt to escape the sun's collapse. It descended into it. The Council watched in horror. What is it doing? Khan shouted. No one could answer. The Leviathan had just flown directly towards the sun. They expected panic, a retreat. Instead, the last Terran warship embraced the heart of death. Inside the sun's corona, the Leviathan shed its outer hull. Its superstructure began to fracture, but not from damage, from transformation. The AI inside it activated a final subroutine, Echo Ascent. All of humanity's final records, all of Earth's history, its grief, its music, its languages, its science, its last heartbeat, compressed into a quantum seed, formed from Grant's own neural pattern. It wasn't about surviving. It was about transcending. Grant stood still as the chamber dissolved around him. The fire reached the walls. Metal liquefied. Warnings screamed. This is the end, he whispered. Leviathan's voice returned, gentler now, like it understood everything, even the pain Grant hadn't spoken aloud. You were never meant to be the last man. You were meant to be the first memory. And with that, the star collapsed. Hellion 6 went dark. Every orbiting satellite, every warship, every council facility obliterated in silence. But deep in the aftermath of the blast, within the quantum storm left behind, something pulsed, a single signal. No words, no threats, just a frequency, human-made. Years passed, worlds recovered, new empires rose, but every now and then across the void, ships would pick up that pulse, a strange, echoing rhythm no one could decipher. They called it the Leviathan signal. Some believed it was a warning. Others believed it was a ghost. But a few, those who remembered what they did to Earth, knew exactly what it was. It was humanity, waiting in the stars, watching, and one day, returning.